This is a presentation of OneLogin training.
Welcome to Configuring Windows Domain Authentication, Part 3. All right, last major configuration step. It's not the absolute last step, but it's the last major configuration step in getting WDA fully up and configured is to make sure that it is enabled for load balancing. Again, this is a best practice. You could have it running on a single machine. Don't have to worry about this. You'd be using that port 880, HTTP when necessary, but best practice, Active Directory Connector Service installed on more than one system. And I am going to configure WDA for load balancing. Main thing that I need in order for load balancing to work is I need to configure my ADC instances to use SSL. So what does this mean? This means now I need a certificate. Where am I going to get the certificate from? Well, we walk through the steps here on how to grab the certificate from Active Directory Certificate Services. So that means that you need Active Directory Certificate Services installed and configured in your environment already, which you might already have it up and running, or you need to make sure that you do this before you go through the rest of these steps. And you'll need to perform all of these steps that I've outlined here on each one of the Active Directory Connector instances. That means each one of the systems that you install the Active Directory Connector software on. So, what are the steps? First, grab the certificate. Then, use the network shell or netsh command utility to execute a lovely command that will basically add an SSL endpoint using that new certificate you just requested. That steps 3 and 4 might already be done. If you've been following along with the steps as I have recommended that you do them, then they've already been done, i.e. your ADC instances have been configured to use port 443. Because say you did that when you installed your Active Directory Connector software. If you did not, you can always modify it at this point through a config file. We'll take a look at that. Then making sure that those URLs on the ADC instances, so through the admin UI where you specify that desktop SSO redirect URL value, that those are configured to use HTTPS and port 443. Again, that's what we demoed earlier in this course. You want to make sure that that has been what is done before you finally go and enable all of Windows Domain Authentication. Last but not least, once you make sure all these settings are in place, restart the Active Directory Connector service running on that member server. This will ensure that those settings have been applied. Again, don't forget, these steps need to be done on each Active Directory Connector instance you have running within your AD environment. So, those prereqs, make sure Active Directory Certificate Services up and running. You can do this through, GUI interface. Server Manager has that add features option, roles and features option. Choose Active Directory Certificate Services, run through the wizard, and then you can enable it as a root certificate server. Or you can just execute a couple of PowerShell commandlets like I have listed here, the add Windows feature commandlet there and the install ADCS certificate authority commandlet, and you'll get yourself up and running and have an ADCS certificate server that is a root certificate server and will work for what we need. So make sure this has been done. Then you will need to request the certificate. How do you request the certificate? There's also command line ways, but through GUI, you're going to do it using the certificate MMC. It's not added to your administrative tools by default, so we need to launch the MMC, just a blank one. So hit the start menu, type run, type in MMC, hit OK, and up pops a blank MMC console. You're going to add the certificate snap-in, so go to File, choose Add, Remove Snap-in, choose Certificates on the left, click Add, New Wizard. We are associating this certificate or assigning it to the computer account. So select my computer account from the radio buttons here. Click Next. Local computer is the default, so finish. And you should see certificates listed over on the left-hand side. Click OK. Now we are in the certificates MMC. Now, again, certificates applying to the local computer. So personal is the container we want to select. Right-click on personal, all tasks, request new certificate. New wizard. Click next, next. Should only really see one option here. Select computer. That's what we're doing. We're applying a computer certificate. Okay. This is, by the way, one of the reasons that you can only install the Active Directory connector software on member servers when we are configuring Windows Domain Authentication. The certificate process does not work very easily on domain controllers. So nice and clean process if we are using member servers. So check computer, click enroll, give it a second, click finish. You should see the certificate in the middle there where it says issued to. You see member.onelogintraining.com. Double click on it. Here's my pretty certificate. On the details tab, scroll down to the bottom of those fields and you will see thumbprint. It is that thumbprint value that I need. That 22D7ACD blah, 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 blah. That's what I need. I can copy and paste that right now into a notepad file somewhere, or just keep this open because I'm going to need it for the next step. So what is the next step? Well, next step is executing the netsh command. Where can you find the netsh command? Well, we have made it available in your ADC log file. ADC log file is located in the program data directory, which is hidden by default. So to get to the ADC log file, you need to be able to view hidden items. So in Windows Explorer, choose the View menu and check Hidden Items. From there, navigate to Program Data OneLogin Inc. Logs and open up the ADC log file. The command that we want should be at the beginning of the file. If you don't see it, close the file, restart the Active Directory connector service over in the Services MMC, and then reopen the file. You should see it in there. But I've highlighted here, it starts with the SSO SSL command. I want to grab that and put it into some sort of text editor. Now, once it's in the text editor, I need to edit it. You can take out the netsh portion, take out the HTTP portion. Really what I need is the add SSL cert. That's what I'm going to be eventually executing. And then IP port 0.0.0.0:. It's that 443 that I need to put in there. There's a placeholder in the original command, so just replace it with 443. And then where it says cert hash equal, again, original command has a placeholder. I want to replace it with that thumbprint. So you can see I still have the certificate properties open there. I'm grabbing the thumbprint from there and I can paste it directly into the command after the equal sign. No spaces between the equal sign and the garbly-gook 227D7 blah, 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 blah stuff. Okay. I don't need any timestamp information, so the command should end with that last curly brace, as you can see in my example. All right, so now we're actually ready to execute something. Open up PowerShell, run it as with administrative privileges. So right-click, run as administrator, and type netsh, enter. Then type HTTP, enter. Then go and copy that add SSL cert piece that we cobbled together over a notepad and paste it over into here. So everything from add SSL cert through to the end curly brace. It should say SSL certificate successfully added. Woohoo! All right, still not done. Make sure the Active Directory connector knows it's supposed to be using 443. So we've added the cert to the endpoint. We need to make sure it knows to use the endpoint. So how do we do that? Again, we could have done that when we initially installed that Active Directory connector software by specifying 443 when it asked us which port do you want for desktop SSO. If we left it with the default value, which was 8080, we can go back in and make the change by modifying the connector service ESE config file. You will find it on your C drive underneath Program Files x86, OneLogin Inc., OneLogin Active Directory Connector. Open up connector services exe config and go find the HTTP listener URLs element. Under there, see a little string. Make sure the string reads as what I've highlighted here. https://**443. Then save it. Then make sure that through the OneLogin admin UI, those endpoints are using, again, 443. So go back to OneLogin admin UI, users menu, directories, choose the Active Directory connector you're going through, and then click on each one of those instances. So ADC and ADC2 in this case. And for each one, make sure that that desktop SSO redirect URL that you see down there towards the bottom has HTTPS at the beginning, and the port after the internal fully qualified domain name is 443 and not 8080. Now you can restart the Active Directory connector service. So open up your services MMC, right click OneLogin Active Directory connector, restart. Again, perform this on each of the systems that you have installed the Active Directory connector software on. Let's check out those settings in our demo environment. All right, so that full SSL configuration, again, a little tricky. We need to grab the cert. We need to grab cert using the certificate MMC. There is no default certificate MMC, so I need to open up blank MMC console, go and add in certificate, snap in. I'm going to choose computer account because it applies to my local computer. Local computer's default. There, I see it. Okay, now I'm going to expand this guy over here. It's for the local computer, so it's personal. All tasks, request new certificate. Click next, next. And we're going to want to select computer here. We're going to click enroll and finish. So we should see it listed underneath certificates. You can see actually I grabbed one previously. I've already configured this system. So when I double click on the certificate that I added in, I go to details, scroll on down. What I'm really interested in is the thumbprint right here, this value right here. So I could copy and paste this into Notepad right now, or I can wait until I start modifying the command that I need and paste it in where it's going to be used. So the command is in that ADC log file. In order to see the ADC log file, I need to make sure I'm viewing hidden items. And then I can go to program data, OneLogin Inc., logs, and here we see that ADC log file. So just need to open it up like Notepad. And what I should see, come on, towards the beginning of the file is the actual command that I need. So they just sort of put it here, handy dandy. So I'm going to copy this and grab myself a new file and paste it into here. And just so that we can see it a little bit better, we'll increase the font size a bit. Ooh, that's a little bit better. So we're going to execute these commands separately, so I don't really need them in here. I want this add SSL cert. Got a placeholder for the port number. We are enabling SSL. So what is the port for SSL? 443. And we need the cert hash or SSL cert thumbprint. So that's why we left this little guy up over here. And we are going to copy and paste him into text file where it says SSL thumbprint. Ba-doop. All right, so now this is eventually the command that I need to execute. Where am I going to execute it? PowerShell works. And I need to make sure I'm running PowerShell as an administrator. So right click and then do that run as administrator game here. And one once I get my prompt, I'm going to do netsh. I want to do HTTP. And this is where I can now copy and paste this command into here and hit enter. Now, why did it fail? Because it already exists, right? I already configured this machine. So what I should see is that, again, this command's completed successfully like we saw in the screenshots earlier. Okay, so those are basic steps to get that cert associated with the endpoint. And then I just need to make sure that I have correctly configured basically the ADC endpoints to know that they're using SSL. So first I'm going to check my config file, which I'll find underneath program files over here. Okay, OneLogin Inc., Active Directory connector, and this connector service exe config file. Again, open it up with Notepad. And let's expand it a little bit here. We'll just do a little find for HTTP. It should take us directly to the HTTP listener URL right here. And we see this string, HTTPS:///443, right? So it has to have the HTTPS portion and it has to have the 443 portion. Good. I'm good to go there. Again, I might have configured that when I did the initial install. I can come back in here, make the modification later on if I need to. Then the only other thing that I need to make sure is done is that my endpoints through the OneLogin admin UI, which we have over here, are configured to use that HTTPS endpoint. So HTTPS member.onelogintraining.com 443. So everything's in place at this point. Now I just want to make sure any changes that I made have been applied so I can go back over to my Active Directory connector service system, the one that I installed the software on, and I want to restart the service. So multiple ways I can get to the services MMC. I'll do it through my server manager. I could do this from PowerShell also. So many choices. And let's go find OneLogin. Oops, I just passed it because I've forgotten the alphabet. And here we go. So I'm going to right click and do a restart. So I would have to go again through all these steps from grabbing the cert all the way through to this restart of the service itself on every system that I have installed that Active Directory connector software on. And now I have SSL enabled. Now, once we finish all of these configuration steps, we can finally enable Windows Domain Authentication for our users. So go back to that authentication menu within the OneLogin admin UI, choose Windows Domain Authentication, and check that Enable checkbox. And don't forget to save. Before we finish up, we just want to cover a few gotchas I want to make sure you're aware of. So don't forget about the ports. Again, users' workstations will need to communicate with those Active Directory connector instance servers via whatever port you configured for that desktop SSO redirect URL. Again, the default is 8080. We have walked you through how to configure it for 443, so you need to make sure, like if you have any firewalls running internally that might block that communication between your workstations and the ADC instance servers, that port 443, or if you're using it, port 8080, is open. Okay. Also, if you're supporting Macs, again, that have joined, say, your Active Directory domain, you need to make sure Kerberos is correctly configured. And when it comes to, again, supporting Macs with Active Directory service, that means creating a service principal name for that Active Directory connector service account. And this is done by using the handy dandy set SPN command. So example there of the command that's easy to run is set SPN, capital U option, capital S option, and then HTTP. and then /, and then that ADC FQDN, that's that again, that like internal FQDN of your Active Directory connector. So like my dc.onelogin training or member.onlogintraining.com. That's the value that I want there. And then the name of the service account. So the user account that your OneLogin Active Directory connector service is running under. And in this case, in my environment, it was called OneLogin ADC. If you gave it a different name, then specify that there. So set SPN, US, HTTP, again, like dc.onelogintraining.com or member.onelogintraining.com. That's that ADC FQDN, that internal FQDN for it, and the service account name. And again, you'll want to run that specifying each of those FQDNs for your different Active Directory connector instances. Okay? And that, have fun with Desktop SSO, or as it is now called, Windows Domain Authentication. This concludes the last part of configuring Windows Domain Authentication.
This is a presentation of OneLogin Training.